Descent into Darkness, a Call of Cthulhu campaign. Hello, and welcome to Deathwatch's long-running Call of Cthulhu campaign, Descent into Darkness. This is our 4th season, called The Lost City of Pillars. I am Travis, and I will be your keeper today. Before we begin this new chapter, let's go around the table and get an introduction from our players and a bit about the investigator they will be playing, starting with you, Brandon.
I'm Brandon. I'll be playing Bartholomew Wentworth. This is a new investigator that is an ex-soldier who is working for Dr. Andrews, who's another investigator that I've played. He has an extreme loyalty to Dr. Andrews because Dr. Andrews is encouraging and helping him to improve his life and improve his education, so he is working on becoming an archaeologist.
Awesome. I'm Chris. I'm playing Charles Stanton, a hunter and globe-trotting mercenary, I guess, for lack of a better term, who's willing to see that various problems disappear for men of wealth and leisure.
And you may remember him from Season 1. All right, go ahead, John.
And I'm John, also playing Charles Stanton. That's not right.
Spider-Man pointing at him.
It's the resurrection of a war hero, Joseph Thompson, war hero salesman extraordinaire. You may remember him from such antics as getting thrown out the window by a ghost and then never investigating again. Well, he's back, baby. And ready for action.
The proper response to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You're the only sane one here, evidently.
Well, my sanity would definitely say that. Because as soon as the action started, noped the hell out of there.
All right, so here's the story beginnings. And it begins in the Lodge Hall of the Hermetic Order of the Silver Twilight. Its now familiar walls and furnishings exude an understated wealth. Now, it's not familiar to you, Mr. Wentworth, but you are there with Dr. Andrews at the moment. He apparently had a meeting with somebody today, to which you came along as his guest. And this is the first time you've been here, as you've kind of been away a while. So you're getting the first look at it. But they don't go for ostentatious as far as all the riches that this place has, but it's more about the quality of the construction and the booze they have in here, which they're not supposed to have, but it's a club, not a bar. They don't sell it. Anyhow, so you're in the well-stocked bar just off the main lounge area, and 2 men await the arrival of a third in comfortable high-backed chairs, while a bartender in dress clothes with white gloves busies himself with the duties of his station. The 2 men are Dr. Wallace Andrews and his man, one Bartholomew Wentworth, who has recently returned from affairs that have sent him far afield of Boston and the dark events of the past year. One thing you have noticed about your master since your return, Mr. Wentworth, is that his gaze now has an unsettling quality about it. It's as if he looks deeper and with more understanding than other men, and sometimes he'll be looking behind and off to the side, but you still get the impression that he's looking at you somehow. But anyhow, this quality was absent upon your last parting. Nevertheless, you shake away the unnerving effect it has on you, and await the events of the day. In due time, the man with whom Dr. Andrews has an appointment is shown into the bar by the servants of the lodge hall. The newcomer is tall, although beginning to bend due to the ravages of time, and he is dressed in a snappy suit in the English style. You gauge him to be in his 60s, although with the hairline of a much younger man, and a thick mustache that covers his upper lip. The man, who you understand to be George Landseer, the third Lord Stourton, has an air of command, or perhaps entitlement, about him. Mr. Wentworth, will you please make an appraise or credit, or sorry, not appraise, but appearance or credit rating roll?
All right. Appearance. Let's do... Where is my credit? Let's see. That's not good. So we'll do appearance.
Okay.
Failure. Utter. Incomplete.
So you're not entirely unused to this treatment, being Dr. Andrews' right-hand man, but he completely dismisses your existence and focuses his attention on Dr. Andrews, and he says, "Do I have an English accent in me?" "You must be Dr. Andrews. I am Lord Stourton. But we needn't honor such titles on this side of the pond, I should think, so George will do fine. I have read all that I could find about your exploits in Peru. In particular, I found Jackson Elias's work, The Hungry Dead, to be the most fascinating account of the expedition. If this were merely a social call, I would happily get your account of the events. Alas, I have called on you to resolve a matter of personal and professional importance to me, which we will get to in due time, after we have refreshed ourselves, of course." And he motions to the bartender. Sorry, Mr. Wentworth, you're not included in this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But Dr. Andrews sees that you are. He takes his milk-tainted whiskey that he's grown a fondness for because of one Mr. Whitmire serving him drinks in the past, and whatever Mr. Wentworth will have here, he says. "So if you'd like a drink."
No. Actually, I'd rather be like at a different table, but close enough to still hear.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And I'll just have my drink over there, give him privacy. But I still want to be able to hear.
Yeah, you can overhear. So he's talking to Dr. Andrews. He says they have their drinks. They get settled. He says, "First I should ask, have you heard of the ancient city Irem? Sometimes it is called Iram or Ubar. You can make an extreme anthropology/archaeology/history/occult roll if you have any of those. Or you could do a regular Cthulhu Mythos roll.
Extreme, you say?
And I don't have an English accent in the bank, sorry.
A failure on my archaeology.
Sometimes
I'll work towards it. I got to hear it a little bit beforehand, and then it'll morph into a weird blend of Irish and Spanish.
It's not the success of such an endeavor that matters, but the mere attempt.
I see. All right, how did we do? Failed. Okay, so the name means nothing to you, and if it means anything to Dr. Andrews, he conceals it well. But he indicates that whether it means something to him, he'll hear what this George Landseer has to say. "Well, in any case, over the past 25 years, I've become one of the foremost authorities on the matter. That is, despite the fact that I've never seen the city and quite honestly did not truly believe in its existence. I thought it was a ghost story told by the Bedouin to impart a moral lesson and nothing more. Yet, as easily as I dismissed the nameless city, as the Bedou call it, a colleague of mine, Professor Ahmed ibn Mikhail, embraced the legend fully. He is, or perhaps was, a noted Egyptian scholar of history and archaeology, and a dear friend. We were together on many expeditions in our younger years, but in 1889 he had resolved to find the lost city of Irem himself. So it was that we parted ways, and he set off for the Rub Al Khali on his own." You can make another roll here, Wentworth. You eavesdropper. Natural world or navigation.
One's as good as another. Failure there, too.
Feeling
These guys
out
are
of there.
just talking about stuff I don't understand.
Never heard of him.
Don't worry, it's just out of your class.
It's a place, Wentworth, a place.
What was that place called?
The Rub Al Khali. 10 months later, Professor Mikhail wandered into a small Yemeni village, Alafan, with no sign of the rest of his expedition. Luckily, he had friends there who contacted me and tended to him until I was able to arrive. Once there, I was shocked by how my friend, once hale and hearty, had changed. He had lost an immense amount of weight and became unkempt. He had lost his left eye, in what circumstance I was never able to learn. But the empty socket looked as though a small animal had clawed it out. His once black hair had become streaked with white, and his hands shook with palsy. For much of the first few days after my arrival, he did little but mutter half-heard Arabic and rock himself back and forth. After my 5th day in the village, he had a moment of clarity, and I saw briefly my friend as I knew him. I found it, was all he said, and nothing else meaningful since that day. I assumed that it could only mean Irem. I had at first thought to take him with me when I departed, and deposit him in an asylum in Cairo, but I judged the folks of Alafan to be better caretakers, and so left him there. Oddly, the villagers treated him with a strange mixture of fear and tenderness. So I left my friend for what I assumed would be the last time. From that moment, I devoured all the knowledge that I could find regarding legendary Irem of the Pillars. Based on the amount of lore I gathered from the most obscure and ancient tomes I could get my hands on, I was able to author 2 books to consolidate my work over the last few decades. Lord Stourton, he hands those 2 red cloth-bound books to Dr. Andrews, who only glances at them briefly, but then he passes them behind him to you.
Okay.
So you're holding those in your hands. I'll share that with you. Okay, so those are the 2 books, The Legend of Irem, The City of Pillars, published in 1911, and then In Search of the Nameless City, published in 1918. So this just tells of the legendary lost city in the Arabian desert, sometimes called Irem or Ubar, or the City of Pillars, the Many-Columned, or the Nameless City. There are many legends surrounding the great city. Some say it was created by, this is kind of like in the jacket or whatever type, little jacket blurb. Some say it was created by creatures of great size and strength. Some say it was built by those from the sky, who remain there to this day. More believable myths suggest that it was built by the great king Shaddad, who dared to make a paradise on earth greater than heaven. All of the legends of Irem claim that it was destroyed. Some say it was a rain of fire from a wrathful god. Others claim it was destroyed by the burrowers from below. Another account says it was simply a great noise from heaven that felled the mighty city. Whatever the case, Irem has been lost in time and is a largely haunted place, one to be shunned if ever encountered in the shifting Arabian sands. And I included some real-world sources in there you can peruse if you'd like that mention this place. But let's pause right there with Mr. Wentworth as the conversation fades to a buzz and you're just turning these books over in your hand. And we will go over to Joseph Thompson. All right, Mr. Thompson, it's a few hours earlier in the mist-cloaked town of Arkham, Massachusetts, and you sit in the Orne Library at the Miskatonic University. You're a war veteran and a traveling salesman, and you're a man who's brushed close to the terrible truth, yet you know nothing of terraforming serpent people, bound jinn, or ancient deities that abide in alien and tenebrous places. Perhaps it's because you do not want to know. Nevertheless, you're compelled by a natural curiosity to read the monthly newsletter published by the Society for the Exploration of the Unexplained, an informal group centered around the discussion of the unknown and the esoteric. In this month's edition, there are new reports of flying cows spotted in the rural Massachusetts area, and in Boston, a hair-raising report of a man, seemingly dead, rising from his slab in a morgue and walking out of the hospital, or so the night attendant claims. Ghosts and ghouls and magical artifacts, each more unbelievable than the last, and with only a tenuous thread connecting them to the world of academia. Your attention is drawn away from the collection of weird tales and towards a young man hurrying towards you. His face, plain and mild, is flushed with exertion. His eyes are wide behind strong prescription glasses. You know him as Thaddeus Grunwald, the secretary for the SEU. The man to whom you gave your report about the events in the Corbett house. But your mind shies away from that memory for now. Hello, Mr. Thompson. I understand you're traveling to Boston soon. Might you do a small favor for me?
Thaddeus, of course. What can I do for you?
Well, okay, I overheard Dr. Armitage talking to a British guy, right? And they had a conversation was brief. He was mostly looking for the whereabouts of a few SEU members. But what really interested me was he mentioned some expedition to a lost city within the Arabian Peninsula and a possible expedition there. And I just really need to be a member of that. As you know, my dissertation is on the migratory patterns of locust swarms. Note, you do not know this, Mr. Thompson. Research from that peninsula would prove invaluable to my work. Since you will be in Boston, might I persuade you to impress upon whoever's going to lead this expedition that a small grant from the college could be arranged in return for membership in the expedition and rights to publish, of course. I would go myself, but I'd likely bungle my request. As I understand it, you are a salesman and a good one at that. Look, I'll give you $10 for the trouble. And he pulls out a crumpled $10 bill and waves it in front of you.
Man's throwing down good
Lost
money.
City, $10. I'll pick up my pack of cigarettes and light one. Say, yes, I believe I could drop this letter off for you, Thaddeus. I'll make sure to put in the best word.
Well, he looks immensely relieved and hands you that $10 bill he was waving in front of you.
I'll pocket that and put the letter into my briefcase and say,
Okay.
Don't worry, Thaddeus. Your letter is safe with me. I'm sure that
Wait,
you'll
I
be
didn't
out
write
there.
a letter.
Yes,
Mr.
you did.
You'll need to track down whoever this. He was looking for Dr. Andrews or a Mr. Monroe or a Mr. Whitmire. So
If you never wrote a letter, then what is this, Thaddeus?
all right, well, roll your persuade.
So
All
he's
it has is
looking
a-
for one of those three. Who?
So he overheard a conversation. He doesn't know. He just knows that somebody's putting an expedition together. He's very excited to be a part of it, and he wants you to
Facilitate the
facilitate either the meeting or just tell them that the college would be happy to put some money down, which he might be talking out of school about. But
Monroe was part of the Corbett investigation, wasn't
yeah, while you're sure you've heard the names Whitmire, Andrews, and Monroe before, as they've attended the same SEU meetings, only one name brings a face to your mind, and that's Mr. Monroe. That's because during the summer of last year, he reached out to you about the Corbett House incident. The meeting, as you recall it, between the two of you was brief, as there was little you could add to the story he had already put together because you had left the investigation so soon. Although you did find it particularly interesting that he also seemed as interested on your thoughts on Professor Johann Mueller as he did on the Corbett House incident. As far as like his character and whatnot, you kind of got the sense he was trying to ask something directly, indirectly. In the end, you were left with a favorable impression of him. He was a popinjay, you would say, but he had a knack for self-promotion. So in other words, game recognized game.
And you still are finding flyers
Right.
to his Curioso.
He left you with an infinite amount of flyers. But at the conclusion of that brief meeting, it seemed Monroe had more to tell you, but then he thought better of it for whatever reason, and that's the last you heard from him. Now, you have since come to understand that he died just this past August. You don't know the circumstances, but a small memorial, or in the way of just a framed photograph, has been mounted on the wall in the Orne private reading room, along with other esteemed members of the SEU that have gone to the great beyond.
Okay.
So you did have that one meeting.
Well, looks like I'll have to track down one of these other two then. And I know just the place to start.
Where?
Time to call up Johann Mueller.
Everybody's missing.
No, I will, let's see, I don't believe any of them were members of the SCU.
Well, the SEU does keep a directory of current members and how they can be contacted. You could look at the membership rolls
Yeah, that would be...
or something like that.
That'd be probably first step is to see, like I said, I don't remember any of them being, but I could be wrong. So
Okay.
I'll look at him and very serious face, or look on my face and say, Thaddeus, your letter will be good with me.
Did
And
you
then
roll that
stand up and excuse myself.
He's just mildly
It's a
confused, but
success, by the way.
he's like, I did write a letter. You're right. You're absolutely right. Make sure it gets to whoever I wrote it to.
As the letter
Thank you.
is my endorsement for for a spot on this expedition, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And that does fit the things you've been thinking about these last few years. You've been having, you like the sales gig, but it does come with a lot of lonely travel and, just waiting for opportunities to arise where you just have existential crisis after existential crisis. And so, according to your journal, one of your motivations is to have something of an adventure, and
I'd like to
certainly an expedition would fit that.
regain some of the what am I thinking of here? Basically, not relive. Definitely don't want to go to war again, but as a young kid,
The excitement.
yeah, some of the
Right.
excitement of youth is that may have been stolen from the terrible conditions of the war. But I feel that it's safer to explore out into the unknowns than the known horror of the Germans.
Yes. Germany is a silly place.
Absolutely silly.
All right, we'll pause with you for a moment. Head over to Chris and Charles Stanton. So, across the Atlantic in a private villa situated in Morocco, another man sits at an ostentatious desk, in the sense that it evokes the huntsman that you are, right? There are many things on it gathered from odd places in the dark continent that remind you of those times, but you're examining the contents of a plain wooden box. It does have iron bands at the corners to protect it. But anyhow, so this is a Mr. Charles Stanton, expedition guide and operator of Stanton Inc., a prestigious group of guides and adventurers. You turn the loose leaf of paper that you got from the box in your hand for the 100th time. Now, some might accuse you of being a robber and a murderer, but those same people simply lack a sense of adventure and the will to complete difficult tasks. But your reputation does not concern you at the moment. What concerns you is a parcel sent to you by Mr. Rupert Merriweather, an old friend of yours. Perhaps friend is not the right word. Benefactor? Rival? Whatever Mr. Merriweather was, he was now dead, it would seem. Evidently, he had included you in his will in the way of this parcel before you. So you're looking at one page, which seems to be a poem. Let me share that with you. And I feel like receiving a poem from anybody might make Stanton a little angry, put you in a bad mood, move you down the ladder of this is how this day is going to be, or not.
The good Lord saw fit to not spare me this day.
And it says, down the 70 steps of slumber, towards the cavern of flame, before too old and ancient who judge by deed and name, down the 700 steps to the gates of deeper slumber, from ancient tree runs a path into enchanted wood and land of eternal summer. There a mountain rises 7½ miles towards the sky, Mount Illyrian, the home of old, to Egaroth, empty and cold. Stand against him who lies dreaming, stand against him who will rise again. And that was sitting on top of an envelope, and there you see behind it a much more standard letter in respectable writing, pure prose. And this one appears to be written by your good friend Rupert Merriweather, and says, Dear Charles Stanton, there is an adventure beyond the wall of sleep and death, the last great expedition for men such as ourselves. 21 times have I traveled there and learned much, but primarily the vast depth of my own ignorance. However, I was foolish and became severed from this land of dream for all time. When I die, I will now cease to be, completely. Nothingness was always my great fear in this life, but to have learned, truly, that something continues beyond the veil, and then to have it snatched away is a bitter joke indeed. You needn't be the target of such a cruel jest, old friend. I caution you to take care. There is work to be done there when you grow weary of the waking world, and in need of new dark continents to discover. Enclosed is an artifact I found in my younger years. It was unearthed in an unremarkable cellar in Memphis, but it can quite remarkably transport you beyond the wall of sleep. However, much more than I have learned should be discovered before it is used in excess. The path to the dream is guarded by gods unknown to humans, save those civilizations that have disappeared from earth and myth. Know that these gods do not take kindly to those that circumvent the normal path into the dream, and they will enforce their laws, strange as they are to our thinking. In any case, merely set the artifact next to your bed when you sleep, and you shall awake to begin an expedition to end all expeditions. There is much more to tell, but time has run its course. Knowledge is easy to impart, but understanding requires much more effort. Likely you will discard this letter as the ravings of a lunatic. I am old and tired, and the void I once feared now seems like an easy retirement. You will have to gain your own wisdom on the matter. I will, however, make an effort to answer your chief question. Why Charles Stanton? Even now I second-guess my decision. Yes, why do I pass this baton to you? I suppose it's because you are the only man who I've ever known to touch the darkness and seem better for it. I know far more trustworthy, honorable, and skilled men, yet only you have this particular quality. Perhaps what is required to explore the dream to its fullest is a bastard as murderous, mercenary, and self-serving as you are. Know that I describe you in this fashion with a sort of fondness. It takes all sorts, as they say. But still yourself, Mr. Stanton, because it is a much darker jungle than any have imagined. Perhaps dark enough to change even you. Dream well, Rupert Merriweather.
Oh, I think Stanton was puffing on his pipe while he was reading that, and I think he might be kind of sad. But, stoic. And he'll just pull the pipe from between his teeth and kind of like breathe out a big old plume of smoke and bastard. Got off easy. And I'll fold the letter up and I'll turn to the box.
All right, so in the box, which is most of the contents, like you had the top folded off, and then you had like another layer that would also come out, right? So the letter and this page with a poem on it was on top of that top layer, and you can move that and it completely comes out, and there you have like a velvet lined box, which inside is a yellow egg-shaped crystal roughly a foot in diameter, and that's what you see just looking at it. Let me share something with you. So it looks like that. This is AI generated, so forgive that they didn't get the dimensions correct if you close that.
Yeah.
Impossible to close, but they did get the look of the crystal pretty good.
So that's like what, hand size, about palm, or or is it bigger?
It's about a foot in total diameter. So yeah, you can hold it in your hand fairly easily in one hand.
Yeah, I'll kind of pick it up and I'll hold it up to a nearby light and see if I can, I'm just checking it out.
Yeah, your immediate sense is that it's fragile, despite its 20-pound weight. And you get the sense of it being hollow, just as your hands, like if you're shifting it around when they tap the surface of it, has a hollow sound to it. But other than that, it doesn't seem to do anything else.
Well, Merriweather put stock in it. Perhaps I should do the same. Or perhaps just another bauble. I'll gingerly sit it down, because regardless, it was a gift from a person who...
Right.
At the very least, if not was a friend, was definitely very much involved in a good bulk of my life. And I don't just want to destroy something that he gave me.
Throw it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Useless.
But, Stanton is very much a man of the world in more ways than one.
Right.
The paranormal isn't something he puts much stock in. Most likely to keep himself from worrying about where he's going. Right,
but he does have some superstitions.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, while you're wondering about all of this, because this is sort of an unexpected... he was somewhat of a mystical figure, but he was always down to earth in your dealings, and this is like a totally mystical thing that has occurred, and so you're kind of mystified, basically.
Yeah.
But you have a tap at your study door, and one of your serving men pokes their head in.
Gesture.
There's a man at the gate asking for you. Do I call you my lord? Sir.
Sir.
Mr. Flanagan. He says he worked for you in the past. Anyhow, shall I let him in?
Yes, of course. Don't just stand there all day.
So you recognize the name Flanagan to be Ray Flanagan. He worked for Stanton Inc. He came with you guys on Peru. He was your machine gunner.
Okay, the drunkard.
Drunk Irish fella. But yeah, after a short wait, he's shown into your study there with hat in hand. As you understood it, he got a pretty large portion of the riches brought back from Peru, as was the standard agreement for men in Stanton Inc. to get not like a full share by any stretch, but enough for a working man to probably retire on, which is what he claimed to do, which is why he quit. Yet here he is. And it's been roughly a year since that thing, and he's sort of shamefaced, and he has his hat in his hand, and he's like, Mr. Stanton.
You're looking drier in more ways than one, Flanagan.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. I've come to ask for my old job back. I'm running out of money, you see. I'm still good with the old trigger finger.
Are you? It looks like you have the shakes to me.
No.
We'll have to remedy that if you're to work for me.
Well, I sure hope you say yes, because I spent the last of my money to get here. And I don't know what I'm going to do if you say no, so please, Mr. Stanton.
I'm not too keen on men that just quit willy-nilly.
I won't make the mistake again.
See that you don't. That said, you didn't run last time, and I don't think you'll run this time either. I do need a gunner. I suppose you'll do until I find a better one.
Just the old rate, then?
No.
He kind of drops his head, expecting.
He'll come in at half.
All right.
You agreed to that too easily, Flanagan.
I'm good at shooting, not talking or saving or any of those things. Half.
We're going to have to see where you left your spine. All right.
I think you probably have a barracks or somewhere, something like that, for the men to be on.
Yeah, I'll, I don't know, drop a quick contract, something real simple, and then give this to the, what would a garrison officer be, essentially? Or
yeah, right.
Just drop a quick contract, have him put his X down, and then give that to the whoever would be in charge of the barracks.
Yeah, okay. All right, so leaving Charles Stanton on drawing up the contract to rehire one Ray Flanagan, we will return back to the bar in the lodge hall of the Hermetic Order of the Silver Twilight. You'd been looking at those books, but now you've sort of set them in your lap or underneath your arm, or however you might do it, and you continue your eavesdropping, where Lord Stourton continues. Twice I tried to retrace Ahmed's steps, but was rebuffed, both times for one reason or another. The silver lining to all this was that my books did quite well, particularly amongst Europe's elite, who are ever infatuated with the ancient world, especially to those myths that speak of forgotten civilization. I made an embarrassing amount of money speaking to universities and fraternal organizations and occult groups. It was because of this that I was approached by a wealthy American by the name of Malcolm Gaston, who claimed to be a businessman who moonlighted as an archaeologist. He seemed highly educated and had a voracious hunger for all I could tell him about Irem, and yet, within a few meetings I grew to loathe the man. In my long career I have met many people and have become quite adept at sizing them up. Twice, by my count, this has saved my life. Now I am certain that it has saved my life once again. After learning all I could teach him, Malcolm requested one last meeting, but I was wary and weary of his pestering. I tried to make excuses, but relented in the face of his persistence and agreed. A side effect of English courtesy, I suppose. On the night of the meeting, I sent my servant to convey a pretense for my absence. This occurred in June of last year, and I have not heard from my servant or Mr. Gaston since then. Efforts by authorities to find my servant or Mr. Gaston have proven fruitless, as it seems Malcolm Gaston was an alias. Separately, about 1 week ago, I received this message. It was postmarked in Sana'a, Yemen. I recognized the handwriting to be that of my dear friend, Professor Ahmed ibn Mikhail. And he passes this note off to Dr. Andrews, who again, not wanting to hold things in his hand, maybe for a lore reason, passes it off to you after a momentary glance. And it's just really simple, scrawled on the back of a different piece of paper. It just says, "It's time now, it's time to go back. Something is going to happen and I must be there."
And he got this note from that professor?
Yeah, the one who tried to go to Irem in 1889. but the expedition apparently failed and he was wounded
And when did he get this note?
a week ago. My gut tells me the arrival of this message and my meetings with Malcolm Gaston are connected or soon will be. I recognize well the look of avarice worn by Mr. Gaston and suspect he has designs for Irem. He is aware of Ahmed, as in the beginning I saw little reason to be discreet, and indeed one could find all about Ahmed's expedition in my writings and other places if they looked. About his attempt at finding the nameless city, and I fear for my old friend's safety. Which brings me to the point of our meeting, which is just this. I need a private interest to travel to Yemen, look in on my friend Ahmed, and facilitate an expedition and his return to Irem. Politics in the region are such that I dare not involve state interests, which means my interests, directly. Nor am I healthy enough for such an endeavor, even if it were the case. I understand the enormity of this request, Dr. Andrews, and I can do little but appeal to your sense of adventure, if Mr. Elias's characterization of you is accurate. I can offer $12,000 to begin you on your journey, but I'm afraid that this amount is but a drop in the bucket against the number you will need to begin such an undertaking. Now, before you dismiss me out of hand, think on it, will you? You will be the one to make a discovery that academia will speak of for decades, and it will belong to no empire, be it English or American, but to all truth seekers the world over. And, if the legends are true, there will be gold and jewels in abundance. Well, there it all is. What say you, or would you like some time to think on it? And Dr. Andrews says he would need to think on it. And so they give their parting words, and Lord Starenton leaves the lodge hall. So you're left in there with Dr. Andrews, who is silent for a long time, but then he asks you, what do you think, Mr. Wentworth?
Well, I think it'll be, even without the presence of any lost city, it's a dangerous part of the world. It'll be a dangerous expedition. I must implore you not to go unless you take me with you.
Oh, I wasn't planning on going.
Oh, okay.
Not unless some will beyond my own forces me to.
Does he look at his...
But he says, no, I was thinking this might be a good task for you.
Oh, you'd like me to go find this city?
I can't think of a better man. You speak the language. You're war experienced.
Okay. If that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. But I read this little excerpt from one of these books, and I'll show him the part where it talks about the man who found the city. And he took some of the pearls when he left. But by the time he showed after he told the story, it got the interest of some king. And by the time he showed the pearl to that king, it had become all yellowed. I took it to mean that
Cursed wealth.
Being removed from the city rendered it useless. So I don't know that we can count on, should we find the place, I don't know that we can count on the wealth to be found there to do us any good if money is a concern.
Well, money is a concern, but it's the money required to get started, not the money we may find. And isn't that the story with every lost treasure? It's cursed in some fashion. Now, I suggest you take those curses very seriously, Mr. Wentworth. I have reason to believe that they deserve more merit than I have had in the past. However, I did take a portion from my last journey, and I'm more or less in good health. And the things that have befallen me have not been necessarily because of that money. But so then the main problem, I suppose our next problem would be, how would we fund such an expedition? Obviously, Mr. Landseer came to me because I have money. So, out of game, I don't know how much money Dr. Andrews has. Do you recall that off the top of your head? Should I import his character sheet over real quick?
What is it? His wealth is in the 80s, isn't it?
90.
90?
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was a good amount.
Yeah, I just remember Brandon saying that I was looking at my credit score, and it appears that I am so wealthy.
Right.
Yeah.
I think people say game-breaking wealthy if you play in modern era, just because
He's like in the Gates,
you also have the tech
Musk
bonus.
type.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I brought Dr. Andrews over. Let's open him up. Get his possessions. You have 170,000 in unassigned assets. So, Brandon, you could choose to have him make a credit rating roll, in which case, if he succeeds, he can liquidate an amount that you want him to do. He's thinking, just doing a little quick calculation in his head, of what might be needed for something of this magnitude. Might even exceed his wealth, but he could take a portion of it for the cause and look for funding elsewhere. He might be able to do the whole thing. It depends on what kind of spending you guys require when you get into it. But in this game, when you start spending your asset wealth, it brings your credit rating down because you're having to sell off your the things that make, what do they call that term? Passive income possible.
Yeah.
And that stops being a thing, or you're selling off your home or whatever.
In this case,
the patents you hold,
plundered gold. Yeah.
So he doesn't have it. He has 170,000 that you haven't assigned anywhere. You have 5,000 that are assets that are tied up with the PI agency you founded with Whitmire, and then 5,000 in the housing and care of Charlie Murphy. And you can leave those alone, and they'll stay intact. But when we do your investigator development phase, if your assets drop below your level, then you start getting knocked down to the level below. So,
yeah. Well, how much does he think an expedition like this will cost?
Well, you're thinking, well, you happen to know a guy who does guides for these, and you know just by word of mouth that if you were to get him and his whole team, which you have about what the Brits would call a section, which is like a subunit below platoon size, right? Because you have to have the various roles in an expedition that are kind of similar to what a section might need, So like your medical person and, some other guy who's good at navigating or dealing with the locals. And
also helps that they're probably all
military
already.
And a mechanic, as well as people who can shoot a gun well, because when you're... It expedites the act of expeditions to kill people before you.
Well, when you're traipsing through someone else's land willy-nilly, usually they shoot at you or attack.
So he pays his assets, 20,000 of his assets a year are tied up with operating Stanton Inc. So if you want to hire the whole section, then that's $20K, which is what he likes to ask for. So he's got his year solid. And one expedition is really all his team could handle of this level. If it's in Northern Africa, it's a little bit easier for him to get his men in place. But so that's who would come to Dr. Andrews' head. He knows Charles Stanton well. I don't know if he has a fondness for him, but that is also Chris's into playing Charles Stanton.
He has a fondness for working with him, not
his character. Right.
Yeah.
Which seems to be the standard. Well, he is skilled, but...
Yeah, no, it's like he appreciates his competence.
Yeah,
he wouldn't want to go, carousing. With him,
Just give it time. Soon Andrews will be the one telling me to execute the.
Right. So yeah, if you did like just a rough calculation, you could think just getting there might be in the thousands of dollars for a few people. But then you're like, how many people do you hire once you get there? How much specialized equipment do you need? So you're thinking 50 to 100K is a good place to start, and it might get you all the way as well. But there's always unforeseen consequences. Say you do find a vast amount of wealth, getting it back untouched is its own costly problem.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to fall on him. He, from being in the academic world that you can get grants from colleges in return for publishing rights and usually positions on the expedition roster. You could do a press release of some kind to attract other wealthy individuals. It seems what George Landseer is concerned about is getting state interests involved.
You know what Andrews will do? He'll pay for it so that he doesn't have to share any of those.
Yeah.
Especially after hearing Lord Stourton talk about how much money his books made.
Yeah. It's just more wealth for him.
If Andrews can have the publishing rights for the story, plus whatever they might happen to find.
So what do you want to start with? Because it'll take you some time to start liquidating certain things. You could sell off your flat in Boston, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
You want to come in at the 50K range?
Let's
guarantee
go
your seat in heaven. 100K? All right.
Yeah, let's say that's probably a good.
Here, let me give you access to Dr. Andrews so you can roll his credit rating real quick.
Dr.
Which you're
Andrews
unlikely to...
about to risk it all.
You're unlikely to fail, but I don't want me to be the one rolling it if you do. Okay, it should appear over there for you.
Got it.
All right.
Yeah, so credit rating 90.
Nice. Okay, so you think it should take you... This was a Saturday, so you'll need the following business week to move all the money around.
Yeah.
And you'll need some knowledgeable people, and obviously the first person that comes to mind for you is Charles Stanton.
Yeah.
So
so Andrews, Andrews will say, I'll fund it, to this level. And that way, all the publishing rights go to me, but also that way and he'll say to Wentworth, that way you can be in charge.
Okay.
Because a lot of times when you get other people all going together, you get some psycho who has a breakdown in the middle of it and decides he's got to do stupid things to attain glory.
Right.
I've seen how these things go, trust me. And I'll put you in touch with this, or I'll get in touch with this man that I know that I've worked with before that can guide you.
Andrews also knows that Stanton very much made sure that Merriweather got as much of the stuff that Merriweather wanted back. That like he was steadfast to his contract, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Despite me being a murderous son of a bitch.
Yes. Okay, so we'll pause there with you guys' ongoing discussion in the bar about that. And we'll head back over to Mr. Thompson, who has agreed to take a mysterious letter.
Very mysterious.
And pitch this idea of some funding from the Miskatonic University in exchange for a membership in the expedition and publishing rights for a Thaddeus Grunwald, if possible. But so there you are.
You have $10 I can put in for this expedition. How much rights does it give me?
Right. You got your $10 mission. I mean, you were here to check in on all the stuff, so you're finishing that up. You got your train departure to Boston, which you were already going to resolve a business matter, unrelated business matter, and you're getting ready to depart. But on your way out, a young woman is seen lurking around the library entrance, and her eyes lock with you for a moment before going away to something else. She has that slightly lost expression on her face that someone has when they're looking for someone or something. And as she's moving along there, she's like, "Excuse me, can you help me? I'm looking for Mr. Thompson. My name is Anita Bennett. I worked with Lance Monroe at the New England Museum of the Occult. Do you know where I can find him?"
Yes, I am Mr. Thompson. It's interesting. I was actually going to try and contact somebody related. Somebody related with Mr. Monroe, at least. What can I do for you, Mrs. Bennett?
Give me just a sec. I seem to have lost access to Roll20.
What is this?
Her eyes glaze over.
Found the beta
when
testing.
she awakes, she'll find herself on a train to Boston. She has joined this expedition.
Man, that's how you need to do it. If you want to, you just need to be able to tank the sand loss from constantly putting people under the spell. See, that's where Monroe is going wrong, right? If you got that type of ability, just throw it out there. You're the investigator now, random stranger.
Okay, I'm back.
Mrs. Bennett, you've been out for some time. No, relax. We're on a train to Boston.
I still have some tabs to search through here.
Mrs. Bennett, put the gun down.
Just wait. Oh, I never uploaded
Don't
this.
sign the deed of all Monroe's estates over to me. No.
When I was getting stumped on certain things, like a year ago, whenever I was writing this stuff, I would go to the AI image generator. So I'm like, 1920s woman receives control of like a cult museum. I was very surprised, that sort of thing. So she's like, oh, but she's got like 3 fingers and stuff like that. Because it was like a year ago too. They were a little bit, but it was good. It was a good image for cosmic horror, because that's how when people drew that back in the day, they would do these little things that are slightly off in the background. And so AI just does that perfectly. But I didn't upload it, so you'll just have to use. But she is a young, attractive woman, as Monroe, while not attracted to her, he just felt that was in his best self-image, projecting an image to people to hire somebody young and attractive. So anyhow, sorry, what did you say, Mr. Thompson? I was off on a tangent mentally.
Said, don't worry, we're on a train to Boston. This seems awkward.
Oh yes,
now.
I will be leaving soon. I have to get back. Well, anyhow, he instructed me to give you this, and she has a package in her hand, and to pass any correspondence from Mr. Corbett on to you, which I got one of those in the mail the other day. Go ahead and roll a sanity roll for me, Mr. Thompson. Starts clawing his face off in the library entrance. You know, there's a dog in the stories out there that battled one of the Cthulhu Mythos things and beat it up. So that dog will just eat your clawed off face leavings as they drop on the ground. All right, so yeah, it's so it wouldn't even be a big effect. It's just you didn't expect to hear it, so it's kind of like a psychic slap in a way to hear the name, much less I suppose a letter from Mr. Corbett, you know. And I suppose you could take this moment on record to explain what Mr. Thompson even thinks about that whole incident, because he left kind of early before things got too weird. They were a little weird, but not too weird.
He's still of a mind that that German pushed him out the window, some way, right? But deep down, he believes that there's a small possibility that place really was.
How could that
haunted.
be? I was standing outside.
Yeah, I believe I saw him fall out of the window.
Somehow he did. Right? We all know
German magic.
We all know that Germans were sneaky.
Right. So anyhow, she's got that letter and a small box that has some heft to it. And she's like, well, really, I was instructed under no conditions to look inside this package. It was already prepared at the moment of his unfortunate passing. And she told me not to correspond with Mr. Corbett. That was to be handed to you.
Well, thank you.
And who are you? I've never met you.
Thank you, Miss Bennett. It's definitely a shock hearing that name again. This may seem a bit forward, but I plan on joining an expedition to a lost city out in the desert, and I was wondering if you would like to come along with all of your funds.
That was the one thing Monroe did not leave me was funds.
Oh.
He left me very little. More of a problem, really.
All these flyers.
But speaking of which, yes, she's like, if you do find something there, I'd be happy to display it for you. And she passes out.
Oh, no.
Monroe had a whole storeroom that was just wall-to-wall, deck to ceiling, just flyers stacked in there.
Is there a look of horror? Does she once again kind of like glaze over as she... Or is there a look of horror on her face as she mechanically...
So many I'm doing this against my will. It was his last instruction via father's imposed will.
Wherever you go from this day forward, a flyer will be handed out.
Oh, that's how she pays for everything, and everybody just takes pity because she's put up with him for so long. They figured that he would have passed his wealth on to her, and so they accept it.
That was that was the wealth portion. Mm-hmm. She opens up the case and it's just the bank lockbox,
right?
And it's just wall to wall flyers.
He was 87 credit rating, but in order to have that many flyers, he had to liquidate himself down to like 23 or whatever it was. But anyhow, yeah, she's like, but it would be nice to have some company on the return trip to Boston. I was just going to catch the last train out.
Well, I would be more than happy to see you back. I assume you're sleeping in the shop now that you're poor because of him.
Well, no, I did have a home.
Back to Boston.
Yes, but he did sleep in the shop.
I think that's just because he was like a dragon.
It's the only way he could afford to have
He was the horde.
A museum. Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was because he was like a dragon and just he'd push all of his artifacts
closer and closer. All right, so fast forward in a little bit, you guys board that last train, the evening train returning to Boston, which takes not too long at all, just a couple hours. But you have this package and this letter from Mr. Corbett. Did you want to peruse its contents now, or save it for another time.
Train seems like a great... Well, the package is from Corbett as well?
No, the package she said was separate, but to pass on any correspondence from Mr. Corbett to you. So
Yeah.
she said she had received a letter
I'll wait
from him, but
on the letter, but I will open the package.
okay, so inside the box, and when you see it, it accounts for the heft of the package. Oh, goodness, jump gate.
Uh-oh. It's the head of Walter Corbett, isn't it?
You were running so snappy. What happened? Anyhow, there's a old book in there, and you can see on the cover in like gold leaf, is that what they call it? I can forget. Are the words Liber Ivanus.
Oh, no.
That's where it ended
Damn
up.
thing.
And this name actually rings a bell for you because when you were doing the run-up investigation to Corbett with Vincent Newell and Professor Mueller, they had found a much disturbed copy of it. Of course, it didn't lie within your realm of interest, but they were, particularly Mueller, seemed excited. He liked old books, was the impression you got from it, but you remember it having something to do with what was going on there. But your main thing was just to shoot Germans.
And accuse them of pushing me out windows.
Magically.
Well, somehow.
Somehow. Okay, why are you doing this, Roll20? But we'll pause there for a moment on you and head back over to Mr. Stanton, who has signed old Ray Flanagan back into Stanton Inc. as a gunner at half the normal rate.
I'm exercising as much, what's the word I'm looking for? Charity. All
Right.
my charitableness has gone out the window almost.
But, you had forgotten about the crystal with the other business at hand, and, you're alone again, and the sun is beginning to set, and as it gets to evening, you hear like an intermittent whistle sound come from either the box where you returned it from, or if the crystal's still sitting there where you had set to get a better look at it.
It'd be in the box again.
You're right.
Yeah.
So you hear it. It's muffled by the box.
Yeah, I'll flip open the lid.
So it does become louder when you flip the lid open, but it's not like a harsh sound. It's actually soothing in a way, and it goes in and out. It kind of has the rhythm of
A lullaby.
yeah. So basically, there's no melody in it or anything like that. That's almost like a mother cooing their child back to sleep.
What'd you send me, Meriwether?
Not that it will force you to sleep or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll reach back out and I'll just close the lid.
Cool. All right, so before we get close to signing off for the day, we will actually bring two of our characters together, if only via telephone. So while you're sitting there wondering at this crystal, the phone you keep in your study
I am a man of leisure and wealth. I can do such.
begins to ring.
Oh.
And this is actually you, Mr. Wentworth.
Oh, okay.
I'll reach over and put the earpiece to my ear. Charles Stanton speaking. Was it Stanton Expeditions? Yeah, there we go. Stanton Expeditions, Charles Stanton speaking.
Mr. Stanton, my name is Bartholomew Wentworth. I am employed by a Dr. Wallace Andrews.
Andrews. I recognize that name.
He gave me your
Peru.
name. Yes, Peru. That's where he said he met you. He said you're a man of
He's
great
bleeding
talents.
heart. Can't quite get done what needs to be done, but he was a decent fellow. And you're saying you work for him?
I do, and he recommended I hire you. We'll be undertaking an expedition into the Saudi Arabian desert.
What do I think about Saudi Arabia right now?
Arabia Felix, you might call it. It's Saudi Arabia doesn't quite exist yet.
As it'll be called in the future.
Right. Dr. Andrews has some new talents he's picked up on.
He can understand the
Yeah.
strings of time.
I've encountered strangers. Can
Well-
carry on.
As a person who keeps his
A bunch of tribes and
finger on the wire, right? Yeah, there's a bunch of many, some of them would have no names that you understand because there are so many Bedou tribes. So the desert portion of it is sort of like a patchwork of these tribes' claims to it. And currently, let's actually move you guys over to a map, a nearly recent map of it. You guys, you can very quickly now do zoom to fit in the little scroll thing, and it'll perfectly put it right there. They kind of worked on that in the last time. But this map is a little out of date because it shows the Ottoman Empire's holdings, and they've recently been broken up. But so what you know is that in the south, in Aden and Hadramaut, those are British protectorates, meaning they rule themselves underneath the British.
Yeah.
Same with Oman and some of the other places. Now, all the old Ottoman Empire holdings have been split up amongst the Allied powers in varying ways. It's sort of a patchwork mess right now that unless you're specifically involved with it, you don't understand fully, right? You know, the French have some holdings here. There's a lot of news about what to do with certain areas, like how they should be handled, Palestine being one of them, right? What you might call Saudi Arabia was the combination of Hejaz and Nejd, those two regions. And then there are some independent, like Yemen had a strong independence movement post-World War or the Great War, that sort of thing. So anyhow, back to what he was asking, an expedition to find to the Arabian Peninsula, but we haven't got an expedition where yet. So.
Well, the Rub Al Khali, right?
Yeah, so you could roll your survival or navigation.
Me?
Yes,
Alrighty.
Mr. Stanton.
Oh, the one roll of the game. Navigation.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, there it is. No, I was scrolled up. So, success.
So the Rub Al Khali, or empty quarter, as it's called by the Bedou, is the largest area of continuous sand in the world. If you recall the figure correctly, it's something like 250,000 square miles of nearly uninhabitable sand dunes, salt flats, and sand sheets, most of which lies within the kingdom of Nejd or the northern parts of like Yemen and those southern countries, right? So what it means to you is there are deserts certainly like it in Africa, but there are none so vast. I think Sahara's bigger. It just is broken up in different ways, right? You know? So like if you were trying to do a crossing of the Rub Al Khali, it would be basically the biggest challenge and that sort of thing you could potentially think of.
So what was it you had just said, Bartholomew?
We'll be undertaking an expedition to find, of course, a lost city said to be there.
In the wasteland of a desert. It seems you'd rather trade one death for a slow one.
Well, I am experienced in deserts, although from what little I've heard, none quite so extreme.
Lost city.
Yes, it's a lost city of pillars that the stories say was created by a race of giants or beings from heaven, destroyed by God or burrowers from below.
Aren't
haunted,
they all lost cities
dangerous,
seem to be destroyed by such.
and apparently quite dangerous.
This is a picture you guys might see if you were to look at an encyclopedia on it or something like that. So it looks like the surface of another planet.
What's your character's last name, Brandon?
Wentworth.
Wentworth.
Yeah.
Yes. All lost cities are destroyed by such, Mr. Wentworth. It hardly concerns us.
Right. Well, Dr. Andrews has tasked me with mounting an expedition. So would we be able to hire you out for such an expedition?
You most certainly would, depending on the number of men you require.
As many as the game master thinks we need.
It's up to you guys. If you hire his full group, it's 12 men.
Yeah.
Right. And that will include like a mechanic, sub-navigators, somebody he could probably hire in the short term to speak the language if he needed to, although that could be achieved when you get there.
Probably would do that just in case for
Yeah.
redundancy purposes.
And then like medicine, it would have, basically everybody has a slot to fill.
The whole division.
Very well. My asking price normally is 20,000, but I also usually don't wander into a wasteland that speaks of certain death. So I think I'll up that a little bit this time, Mr. Wentworth. Start at 30.
Well, that's understandable. Just as we all understand that, Dr. Andrews gains the benefits of this expedition should we find it.
Absolutely. I also usually allow my men some of the plunder. We can agree on a percentage, or we can sign it up now if you want, but usually it's as much as they can carry.
That sounds fair to me.
Very well. And I'll be... Oh, man. Where was I going? And I'll be answering to...
Me.
And you will be...
What do you mean?
Well, you will be remaining wherever it is you are in the States. You will be coming with...
Oh, no, I'll be coming along.
Very well, but I control my men. I issue orders.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have it any other way.
If you have something that crosses your mind, you come to me, and I will issue and see that your will is done.
Sounds good to me.
Then we shall have no problem, Mr. Wentworth. I'll have contracts sent and signed for you, or I'll have contracts sent for you, or Mr. Andrews, whoever will be fronting the bill. And where exactly are you? Still in Boston? Whereabouts?
I am.
Expect a telegram or a wire shortly.
Okay.
In 3 to 5 business days.
I look forward to working with you, Mr. Stanton.
And I you, Mr. Wentworth. I'll hang up the my end of the line.
All right, so we'll pause there on that. Move back to Mr. Thompson for our final, perhaps short scene as you arrive in Boston. Now, when you had checked the records of SEU members, you had, well, first you had learned that what was kept for Mr. Mueller seemed to be out of date. He had a Arkham address, but a quick, search once you saw that, he hadn't maintained his rents, and so that had gone whoever the owner was. You learned that Dr. Andrews has some contacts at either his Boston apartment, or he'd also listed in there Andrews and Whitmire investigation agencies. So there's that office in Boston you can go to, or his flat there that you could check out. Mr. Monroe is no longer around. And as far as Mr. Whitmire, he left like the equivalent of a P.O. box somewhere in we'll say Providence, right? So it doesn't really say where you would find that guy, just like a place he gets his mail, something like. Where would Whitmire have gotten all his stuff sent to so people couldn't find him?
Well, either the PI firm or just I'd say either a New York or a Boston P.O. box as somewhere where he could just go and collect it.
Yeah, okay, so it seems like the obvious choice if you were to reach either Mr. Whitmire or Dr. Andrews would be at the office. But you could also just try at Dr. Andrews' home once you get into Boston.
What time is it?
And so you arrived there around 7 p.m. in the evening?
The flat would most likely be the logical place.
Okay.
So
and you had a pleasant train ride with Anita Bennett. She is a nice young woman, and you are a young man, so you may roll your appearance or credit rating here, if you'd like, for that first contact.
Glad that I did an appearance. My credit rating would have failed by 2.
Yeah, so you mark yourself as just above average as far as men's looks go. It's part of what you bring to any sales pitch is people just kind of like you based on looks alone. Then you bring in the personality on top of that. So, you do enough that she leaves you with sort of an opening there at the end to maybe go have a drink or a meal at some later date.
I will take her up on that offer once I come back, wholly sane, mind you, from from this lost city of pillars, as I'm sure it will be a rousing success, and only good things will happen.
Yeah, that's what Call of Cthulhu's known for.
Yeah, as I'll also go ahead and pop open that Liber Avanus on the way to Dr. Andrews' place.
Better start reading. This is a big book.
Want to make sure I get through it all before we get there.
Well, you have a cab drop you off. He lives across the Charles River in the nicer neighborhoods, not too far from Harvard or the Lodge Hall for that matter.
Yeah.
And you find yourself in front of his apartment. You can see the lights on according to your information, he's got a third-floor apartment. You can see the lights burning up there. I think he has the entire floor, most likely, just rented out to him. And when you go in, you go up the lift, you tap on the door. That's just as Mr. Wentworth has set down the receiver from his call with Charles Stanton, and you hear somebody knocking at the door.
Yeah, I'll go answer it.
All right.
Good afternoon.
What do you look like, Mr. Thompson?
My name is Mr. Thompson. I'm a 20 or 36-year-old male. But yeah, so standing there, I am a nice dresser, so it's I am in a suit and tie, no slouching on weekdays or weekends. Clean cut. I don't think this has height or anything, but average. I'd say average height. A little on the thinner side.
Yeah, scaled to the era, so I think you're 50 size, so you're like average for a 1920s guy.
Yeah.
And I guess the same is probably important for how Mr. Wentworth appears. We haven't yet got that.
Well, not much different. I'm of, average size. I do have a healthy look to me, a strong, healthy look. But right now, inside, I'm not wearing my scarf, so I have a really ugly scar across my throat. Otherwise, that'd be unremarkable. But it does detract from my overall appearance. But yeah, I'd say I'm with 60 across the board. I'm a little above average height, and have a good constitution, so I look healthy and strong.
A natural glow.
Yeah.
All right, carry on with your conversation.
I'll introduce myself. As my name is Joseph Thompson. I was hoping to speak with Dr. Andrews, if that is you.
And what may I tell him this is regarding?
Well, let me interject at this point. Since you've been back, Dr. Andrews has, usually nightly, he locks himself in a portion of the apartment to work on, to do his studies or to, he check, what does they call that? Not proofread, but...
Oh, right, because he was doing that
yeah,
peer review for the...
Yeah, which is the claim he makes, but he's always in an odd mood. You wouldn't say it's a bad mood. There's just something almost otherworldly about him when he comes out of his studies after this period of time, which is what he's currently doing right now. You know?
Okay.
But you don't see any strange flashes of light under the door or anything like that, but...
I'm afraid that Dr. Andrews cannot be disturbed at the moment. Can I ask what this is regarding?
Yes, I was asked by a librarian at Miskatonic to inquire about him joining along in an expedition that is being put together by Dr. Andrews. I forgot his name, but I do have his letter. And I'll hand him my letter of introduction, which invites me instead.
Please come in and have a seat. Would you like anything to drink?
Thank you. Coffee, please.
So yeah, I'll have him, get seated in the, wherever.
Right.
And then I'll go get him his coffee, and then say, do you mind if I see the letter you're referring to?
Yes.
As it turns out, I will in fact be leading the expedition in Dr. Andrews' stead. So
the letter appears to be when you start reading it, appears to be a page from his dissertation he's working on, and not a letter at all.
From whose dissertation?
Thaddeus Grunwald. You recognize the name. He's got it on there. Well, not really. You don't recognize him, but there are some marks on it that mention the SCU and whatnot. And you know that Dr. Andrews was a member of the SCU from way back. He was always interested in that sort of thing. So,
Right.
that is something. It's from somebody from the SCU. But it's a lot of talk about, locusts and whatnot.
Okay.
This is just the on-running joke that there never was a letter to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But in an attempt to appease Mr. Thompson with this letter, he just gave him a bit of his dissertation.
Okay.
Probably the most vital portion too.
Yeah.
But he'll have to rewrite it.
So, Mr. Thompson, am I to understand that you were asking to go on this expedition?
Yes.
Or
this... I will relay all the information back to Thaddeus so that he may write his dissertation. There's also a good deal of funding involved from the Miskatonic for the publishing rights, if that may be of interest.
It is not.
Well, I have $10.
Mr. Andrews is interested in retaining the publishing rights solely.
Well, I'm not really interested in publishing or wealth. I personally, I'd just like to go, for the adventure of it.
And what is it that this person you're working for is hoping to learn about on this expedition?
Well, and Thaddeus, that was
Locusts?
more of a favor, as he paid me to come and speak to Dr. Andrews about the possible funding and the publishing rights. But again, if that's not of interest, I don't have any idea what he's interested in, other than, again, the money-making aspect or fame aspect of it, of writing a good story about a lost city.
But you yourself want to go on this expedition?
I would.
And what value do you provide?
Well,
it's going to be quite dangerous.
I should say that you recognize, he's putting on a salesman front, right?
Yeah.
But there are certain telltale signs that you recognize in his bearing that signal to you, well, maybe, you want to make a psychology roll? Isn't that good? Well, we'll say you can see it. There are signals.
Oh, look at that.
Ooh, you got it. Nice. So you see that he's had military training.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, there's like a horn blast outside that, comes in through the open window, right? You're letting in some of the cool February air. Yeah. Because you're it's hard, like you have the fireplace, which will get it too warm, and then you get, so you're kind of stuck in that cycle. And he doesn't seem to notice it very much, but he flinches just a little bit. Okay. And you've seen like a ton of that.
Yeah.
Right?
All right.
You yourself might have some, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Or you had the hanging scar. That's right.
Yeah. But I was in the war.
Right.
So
with most people, it went away because they would be rotated to the back line and then to the back supply issue, and it would go away by the time they were brought up. But some people stuck with them.
Okay. Right. So what benefit would be provided by your presence? It'll be quite dangerous, and we can't afford to have any dead weight, so to speak.
Well, and I'm a fair hand with a rifle, as I can fly an aircraft. I've got some first aid skills and driving skills, and very well spoken, despite the introduction.
What languages do you speak, sir?
English.
Oh, okay.
He speaks it well. But I speak it well. As I've got some, I'm a good judge of people. I don't know how to really speak to the psychology aspect of it, but I'm good at reading people, right? Reading intent. And outside of firearms, I can hold my own in a fight. If it comes to that, there's all sorts of conflict over there with those people.
So I'm guessing that you probably joined up before America's entry in the war to give some background to your desert survival experience, and you fought somewhere where like the British were that wasn't just like the Western Front, to see some desert war.
Me?
No, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah.
So he was probably
I've got some desert survival skill as well.
So he fought in a theater that would be in that region, most likely.
Okay.
Maybe
against
not
the
even
Ottomans.
on the books.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Thompson, I am not opposed to you coming along, but why don't you wait, and we can share stories and wait for Dr. Andrews to finish with his work, and then we can speak with him and see what he thinks.
It was very good. It would be good to have another, fellow warrior along as well with you.
All right, let me get you something a little stronger than coffee, and we can swap war stories. And then, basically, I just want to get to know him.
Right.
I want to see what Dr. Andrews thinks about this whole funding thing, and in case he changes his mind, which he won't.
Right. Okay, so we will close the scene on the two men having an engaged conversation about their war experiences, probably forming an early bond.
Yeah.
Just based off that, with Dr. Andrews finally coming out in his strange mood. And, when he sees you have a visitor there, his new piercing gaze that you have no idea where it came from falls on the both of you. And he looks at you and through you and behind you, and he seems to gather something you're just not sure, but it is unsettling. And we'll close it there. So thanks for playing, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I need to send you a link. Oh, man.
Yeah, so it ran a lot quicker with
Until it
opening
didn't.
stuff, but then it... This has been a Deathwatch production. Thank you for listening.